Now, Donald Trump may be about 12,000 kilometres away, but the presidential race has dominated politics here today, with the Prime Minister refusing to condemn his comments that the election is a fraud. Jacinda Ardern gave her first post-election speech to a business audience in Auckland this afternoon, but all eyes were on the contest still unfolding in the United States. There was some good news and not so good news for business. Confirmation the new government will get on and extend support for small business as promised in the campaign, but also that they will be forging ahead with the plan to double sick leave provisions. Our political editor, Patterson, was there and filed this report.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, the opportunity to be with you all. I'm making a bit of a prediction that some of you may have had a late night.
The US election causing Ms Ardern to reflect on politics here and overseas and the tribalism that has become such a feature.
I've increasingly come to believe that we have to find ways that strong views can be held and expressed, but without the accompanying partisanship that stops us from working to build consensus where it really matters.
But there were no strong views to be expressed about Donald Trump's declaration the election is a fraud.
Obviously, as votes are still being counted, I think the whole world waits for the final outcome in the United States. But of course, we continue to have faith in those institutions, as I'm sure they do.
Reluctant too to say whether New Zealand would prefer a Biden or a Trump win.
My job in this role as Prime Minister is to work with whomever another country decides should be their leader, in the same way that New Zealand expects every other country to work with whomever they elect as Prime Minister.
Ms Ardern says she watched the US election unfold last night with interest.
It's a very different electoral system to ours. I think it's long been flagged that we may not have an outcome straight off the bat, and that's not new in American elections. We've seen that before.
As did National's Judith Collins.
The US election was much more fun for me to watch than our election.
Whatever the outcome of the election, New Zealand still has its eye on boosting trade with key markets, including the US, and Ms Ardern says she'll personally be looking to lead international delegations once it's possible.
The UK, where we're currently negotiating a free trade agreement, but also into China, a strong market for us, where we've not long ago had the upgrade, and the United States, where we're always looking for opportunities to extend our markets into an area where we haven't had as good an access.
She also promised to prioritise the expansion of small business support initiatives and fast-track some infrastructure projects through the RMA, as well as moving to double sick leave provisions to 10 days a year. President of the CTU, Richard Wagstaff, welcomes the signal the government intends to move quickly on increasing sick leave.
The sooner we can attend to this, the better, given we are in a pandemic situation and many people have sick leave that has been depleted.
National's Judith Collins says increasing sick leave will have consequences for consumers.
Businesses have to put on extra costs to everyone else when they're, when they're buying, when they're selling products to them or they're selling services. So it actually does increase the cost of living, and it can be the last straw.
Kirk Hope from Business New Zealand says they want to work closely with the government to minimise the cost burden.
Most of that burden will fall on small businesses and their ability to be able to afford that, because it's essentially doubling the sick leave requirements. So as a contingent liability, money that they may have to pay, it's pretty big. So we would want to work with them on how that might be rolled out and how it might be applied to businesses and the timeframes for that.
The Finance Minister, Grant Robertson, says there's no set timetable yet.
That will be decided as we move through the process, but we've committed ourselves to introducing this. But that's exactly the reason to be able to talk to people and use the select committee process to work through the exact timings of implementation.
He says the government intends to introduce legislation to Parliament before Christmas, so the proposal can have full select committee consideration next year. In Auckland for Checkpoint, Patterson.